The emergency lights in the CTU service tunnel flickered weakly, casting long shadows against the damp concrete walls. The air was thick with the scent of coolant and old wiring. Jack Bauer moved fast, his duffel bag slung over one shoulder, his mind already working miles ahead. Beside him, Tony Almeida gripped a flash drive so tight his knuckles turned white. Behind them, CTU wasn't just compromised, it was lost. Nina Myers was in charge now, backed by DOGE's full authority. Everything Jack and Tony had built, every case they had worked, every asset they had trusted, was either under lockdown or in enemy hands. And the doors were closing fast. Neither of them spoke at first. The only sounds were their hurried footsteps and the low hum of ventilation ducts. Then Tony broke the silence. Neither of them spoke at first. The only sounds were their hurried footsteps and the low hum of ventilation ducts. Then Tony broke the silence. "You know what this means, right?" His voice was low, urgent. "CTU's done. DOGE controls everything, intelligence, operations, protocols. It's over, Jack." Jack didn't slow. "No," he said, jaw tight. "The system is over. That's not the same thing." They reached a rusted maintenance ladder bolted to the wall. Jack motioned for Tony to climb first. As Tony hauled himself up, Jack scanned the passage behind them. Still clear, for now. Tony's voice drifted down as he climbed. "Even if we wanted to fight back, how? We've got no infrastructure, no field teams, no backup, no secure comms. We don't even have a place to sleep tonight." Jack adjusted his grip on the duffel bag. "Then we stopped thinking like an agency." Tony swung open the hatch at the top of the ladder. A gust of cold air rushed in, carrying the distant wail of security alarms. They were near the parking lot now. "Stop thinking like an agency?" Tony pulled himself onto the pavement. "Jack, intelligence doesn't run on hope. We can't just operate out of thin air." Jack climbed up after him, exhaling as he looked across the empty lot. The main CTU building loomed in the distance, its once familiar halls now enemy territory. "The network still exists," Jack said. "Scattered, yeah, but it's out there. Analysts, techs, agents, some of them know what's happening. They're going to be looking for a way back in." Tony kept moving, scanning for cover. "And how do we reach them without getting killed?" Jack's mind was already working past that problem. "We don't reach them. We let them find us." Tony turned to him, eyes narrowing. "What the hell does that mean?" Jack's grip tightened on the duffel. He had been turning this over in his head since they left the building, turning it over even before that, if he was being honest with himself. "CTU operated on centralization," he said. "Encrypted networks, designated clearance levels, classified operations. That's why DOGE could take it all down in a single move." He looked at Tony. "We don't rebuild CTU. We make something they can't shut down." Tony exhaled sharply, rubbing a hand down his face. "Jack, a decentralized intelligence network is just a mess of bad data. Without vetting, we won't know what's real and what's noise." Jack shook his head. "Not open source, self-organizing. We don't verify intel, we let them verify each other." Tony blinked. "What?" Jack started walking, keeping his voice low. "We distribute tasks like puzzles, scattered across different platforms, different channels. People solve them without knowing what they're really working on. But the patterns, the real signals, rise to the top on their own." Tony caught up to him. "So, we turn national security into some kind of game?" Jack stopped and looked at him. "Exactly." For a second, Tony just stared. Then, slowly, his mind started catching up. "A LARP," he muttered. "We make it look like an alternate reality game. A fake intelligence operation that people think is just an elaborate conspiracy." He exhaled. "Jesus, Jack." Jack nodded. "People love chasing puzzles. They'll build communities, share intel, compare notes. They won't know they're running a real operation, but the right ones, the ones who rise to the top, they become the network." Tony shook his head. "But if the network builds itself, what stops someone from taking it over, twisting the signal?" Jack's expression didn't change. "They can't." Tony frowned. "Why not?" "Because there's no hierarchy, no one to manipulate, no center to control," Jack said. "Each cell works independently. Every piece of information is verified by multiple people before it's trusted. The system self-corrects. Bad data gets filtered out. Illogical orders don't propagate. No one follows them because no one has to." Tony considered that. "So the truth isn't handed down, it just rises up." Jack nodded. "And it rises to everyone at once. There's no chain of command to hijack. The network isn't loyal to me or you or anyone. It's only loyal to reality. Tony exhaled, running a hand through his hair. It was a hell of a thing. It might actually work. The sound of approaching vehicles rumbled in the distance. Tony swore under his breath. They had to move. Reaching into his jacket, Tony pulled out the flash drive and pressed it into Jack's hand. This is everything I could pull before the lockdown. Stored keys, active backdoors, DOGE's internal memos. If we're doing this, you'll need it. Jack took it, slipping it into his pocket. For a moment, they just stood there, the weight of what came next settling between them. Tony exhaled. Where are you going to go? Jack adjusted the duffel bag over his shoulder. Dark, he said. I need time to set this up. If I'm exposed, this whole thing collapses before it starts. Tony nodded. He already knew the answer. I'll keep moving, Tony said. Lay low, start planting noise. If DOGE is watching, I want them looking in the wrong places. Jack reached out and gripped his shoulder. Stay ahead of them. Tony nodded. You too. Then they split. Jack disappeared into the city, the flash drive tight in his grip. Tony slipped the other way, vanishing into the night. And somewhere inside CTU, Nina Myers was already realizing her phone was missing. The countdown had begun.